I'm sad to see this series go. All good things must come to an end. At the very least, we know that Season 5 is going to be airing later this year, so that's a good thing to look forward to. But it sucks because we're going to have to wait for Season 5. It's going to be a good long while until we get to see our characters once again in new content with them. But before I talk about any content that was in the latest or the last episode of Volume 4 of RWBY, I kind of want to talk about my thoughts overall on the season of RWBY and how Volume 4 has been. As I've stated many times already throughout multiple reviews I have made on RWBY, we know that this season was more focused on the characters facing their problems and learning how to pick up the shattered pieces and move past the problems they've had from the previous season. And that's kind of what the entirety of Volume 4 was focused on. The individual characters like Weiss, RWBY, Blake, and Yang overcoming their individual problems. And this was a very good thing that Rooster Teeth did. I love the direction and where they wanted to take this volume of RWBY. Developing these characters, developing side characters like Ren and Nora we saw, you know, getting to see more Crow in this, getting to see a little bit of Raven, getting to see some of the issues going on with, you know, Cinder and also Salem, you know, having a big role in this season. There was a lot of things about the season I really loved. There was a really good step in the right direction for RWBY as a series. And there is obviously some problems that I do have personally with this volume of RWBY. Now, before I actually say my personal problems with it, I just want to talk about what everybody's been saying about this series. It's like half and half right now. Many are saying they love this season, they absolutely love it, they have no problems with it. And then there's some that are saying the season's okay, but I wish all the characters would get back together again, or it feels too slow-paced, or some even say it's too fast-paced. And personally, I'm on that side. I'm on the side to saying it felt too fast, because a lot of the conflict that was going on in this volume of RWBY could have easily have been a volume and a half or 2 volumes long, because let's just think about this for a second. RWBY's conflict with Crow in this entire volume, and also what was going on with Ren and Nora, that could have been an entire volume if Rooster Teeth really wanted to focus on that. And if, you know, if they had more time, maybe they could have fit in Weiss's stuff along with RWBY and Ren and Nora's type conflict in, you know, this season. And then they could put Yang and Blake's conflict, or whatever's going on with them, in the next season of RWBY. And I felt like the overall season was very fast-paced. It tried to get these characters to move past their problems relatively quickly. I mean, I like the direction of the season, but I felt like more time could have been focused on some of this development. Like, for instance, the Yang stuff. Yang had such a severe loss from the last season. Losing her arm, that's going to affect you so hard, and that could have easily have taken half of the season alone because of how you have to move past the loss of your arm. Rooster Teeth could have dived into Yang's, you know, inner psyche of what's really going on with her, you know, analyzing what she's done in the past, all of her different fighting moves and styles, which they did do, but they could have expanded upon that and dived into it so much more. And so I felt like when it came to the overall pacing of this volume, I wish it was a little bit slower. I mean, I like what I got, but I wish it was a little bit slower and we had more time to process all of this and get to see these characters go through some good development. And that's what I wanted. I mean, we got good development for these characters, but not all of what could have possibly have been if, you know, the entirety of a volume was focused on an individual character, which many might complain and say, okay, it's too slow now if, you know, an individual volume focused on a character. Like, let's say this entirety of the volume focused only on RWBY. Obviously, many would be upset with that, saying it's too fucking slow, which I can understand that point of view as well. But I felt like if you're going to make it too fast, it kind of loses that value that some of the characters have. For instance, how they're moving past these problems. And so, yeah, that's overall my one big concern with this volume. But, however, there is one thing about this episode that really leads into what I was just talking about in terms of development. RWBY. Now, talking about the content of the episode, RWBY is a character that I've already stated a couple episodes ago that has been lacking. She has not gotten any development. There was a very good chance for her to have good development a couple episodes ago, but John stepped in. John was showing his development, and that man was being a very good leader, which fucked over RWBY's character development. I was like, fuck! Like, John, of all times, you decide to be a very good leader. The time you're stepping up, doing all this great character progression and shit, you have to do it when RWBY's having a moment. She needs to understand that some of the things that's happened is her fault. She needs to accept this. And I'm like, damn it, John! But there was a scene in this episode that shows that RWBY does have hope after all. Hope in getting character development. And it's kind of funny, when you think about the series, like, we do know it's not just a series with RWBY as the main character, but the title does say kind of RWBY. And you'd think a character that has kind of like the title named after them, they would have the most development, at the very least. At least more development than the other characters, or at the same level. But to be honest with you, RWBY is a character that relatively is lacking in terms of development, and this season was a perfect chance to do that, develop her character, because this season was focused on that. I was focusing on the individual problems, and when I really take a moment and step back and look at this season, I realized that the scenes with RWBY wasn't really developing her. More when RWBY and her crew was working together and, dealing with their problems, it was mainly focused on Rin and Nora, and it feels like Rooster Teeth kind of excluded RWBY's development for this season, and kind of wanted to put Rin and Nora as front and center for the RWBY scenes. Now, obviously, there was individual scenes, little scenes here and there, but overall, majority of the time that RWBY is on screen, or her crew is on the screen, it was, Rin and Nora, their development, what's going on with their past, how they're overcoming their issues, and so maybe Rooster Teeth wanted to wait to develop RWBY in the upcoming season or mini seasons ahead. When RWBY faces up against Cinder once again, maybe that's when Rooster Teeth will decide to give her more development. But talking about that though, the end of the episode had a very huge narration scene with RWBY kind of giving us her inner thoughts, what she is thinking, how the season has been thus far, her journey, and how she feels like she's in over her head. And that indicates that she is learning. There is hope for RWBY. There is hope for her development, especially when she was writing and you saw tears in her eyes, and she's like, the people we have already, and then she crosses out, she's like, the people we still have. That entire scene shows the weight it has on her mind, and she does feel that still, and how it harms her to this day, how it's a weight on her shoulders, and that shows that there is a lot of potential for development for her character. For Rooster Teeth to even throw that in shows she is still facing a lot of conflicts. Even though John said what he said to RWBY, it still seems like RWBY has those thoughts still inside of her. She still has not moved past those, and she realizes how immature she has been this season, especially with how she says she feels like she's in over her head, and how a lot of bad things happen. I like that scene. Rooster Teeth, good job on that. I will say, you made up for the lack of RWBY development for that one scene, because that hints that next season you might focus on that. So, looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do with her character. Now, looking past that, let's talk about the scene at the end of the episode. Two scenes. We have the Oscar and Crow scene, and then we have the scene with Lionheart. Yeah, I have Leo Lionheart and Watts. I think that's how you say his name. But regardless, though, let's talk about the Lionheart guy. So Lionheart, he's the guy that's with Haven and all that, and it seems like the man has been flipped. He's no longer on the side of RWBY and them. He's not on the good side. And the title says no safe haven, which makes a lot of sense when you see that ending scene of the episode, because Haven is no longer safe. Haven is in the pocket of Salem and Cinder, and so no longer is Haven safe. The top official, Lionheart, is working for Salem from what we can see at the end of the episode, because of how Salem's name was name-dropped in the middle of the conversation. So yeah, Lionheart, probably a bad guy, and he's definitely someone that has been flipped, no longer working on the good side. So that's not good at all. That's definitely not good. So that man has betrayed them all, and that's probably going to be the main antagonist of the next season of RWBY. If it doesn't focus any on other Salem's, goons she sends in, most likely Lionheart is going to be the main big baddie of Season 5. So the Oscar scene now, that scene, very very, very fucking badass, because I love Ozpin. I'm liking what's going on with Oscar, and I'm liking how he's having to accept what's going on with him, and how he's changing, how he has a voice in his head. It adds a lot of interesting things about his character. And when you see this man finally walk up to Crow, he's like, "Hey, mister," and he's like, "Aren't you too young to be drinking Pipsqueak?" I fucking love that. Crow, good man. I love that line from Crow. But when he turns around, the boy's like, "I was told that I should ask you for a cane, my cane or whatever," and then Crow pulls it out. He's like, "Here you go." And I'm like, yo, this man, even fucking Ozpin is back. Like, yo, that was such a good scene. See Crow hand this man his cane, and then he just pulls out, and then the season ends. I'm like, badass. I cannot wait for the continuation of this series. So getting off of all of that, let's talk about the fight now. That is something many are probably going to want me to talk about, and so I was saving kind of the best for last. So the fight scene overall, best fight scene. Best fight scene of the season. Hands down. Best fight scene of the season. There is no competition at all. That was the best fight scene of the season. But it wasn't just because of the action. It was also the meaning, the symbolic meaning of that fight. Rin and Nora have finally moved past their issues. They have finally accepted their past. They have finally gotten their revenge. And that is what that entire battle was trying to let us know. When Rin sees this monster, he sees this Grim, and he's just charging it with reckless abandon. He's going up against it. He's not even caring for his life. It shows how much anger he has and the weight that's on his shoulders after everybody he's already lost. And when Nora finally snaps this man back into action, gives him a nice good slap, lets him know what he's doing wrong, he realizes he needs to live. He needs to live on for those that he's already lost. He needs to protect the ones that are still around. And when you see how he finally opens his eyes, and when he finally is standing there in front of this Grim, he could kill this monster that killed his family, his entire town, that was a great moment. When he chops off the individual arms and all that, he's like, "This is for my mother, this is for my father, this is for everyone in the village, and this is for me." When he said that, it showed he finally has moved past that bump in the road. He has finally matured. He has finally accepted everything that has happened. And that was such a good moment for Rin's character and Nora as well. Because what was happening with Rin, the same could be said for Nora as well. She was getting that development too. So very, very well done scene, Rooster Teeth. I love what you did with these two characters. And especially for support characters or side characters of the series. And as I've already stated in this video, it seemed like you're mainly focusing on Rin and Nora's development instead of RWBY's when it came to this season. So most likely you're wanting to save RWBY's, development for the upcoming seasons of the series. So yeah, that development, I love that closure to that fight. I love the closure, and I love what Rooster Teeth did with that entire scene. I was completely satisfied. Now, another thing I want to talk about has to do with the shipping. For instance, the pairs, Rin, Nora. So, there was a very interesting scene in this episode, besides, the holding hands and stuff. But there was an interesting scene that caught me off guard. I don't recall ever seeing something like that in, RWBY. I could be wrong. I don't remember. But it's something I always see from anime. I watch a lot of anime and stuff, so if you don't know, you're new to the channel and you don't watch RWBY, obviously, I talk about a lot of anime and manga. And there was something that was in this episode that reminded me a lot of an anime. And that was the scene when Rin was pinned up against the wall, and then Nora jumped in and saved him, and then Nora's right above him, and she's like, got the hand out of the way, and then he's looking up, and then Nora's like, "What are you doing? Stop staring," and all that. You can see, and she tries to cover herself, he was looking up her fucking skirt. And I'm like, did they just do that? Like, did I just see what I thought I just saw in this episode? I'm like, okay. I mean, I know that, RWBY's pretty popular in Japan. I know, it's got its own Japanese dub now. I mean, it's very popular. It's like exploded in Japan. So seeing something like that, that's something you would see normally from an anime, I guess it comes at no surprise. It's just like, damn, just that Rin and Nora scene. I mean, I ship the fuck out of those two. I really do. I really ship those two. I mean, I've shipped them since day one, but seeing these two characters have that moment at the end of the season when they're holding hands and all that, I'm like, oh, if these two are not together, I want to be angry. I want to be straight up angry. These two should be together. So yeah, season overall, I think it was a good season. It wasn't, was it the best season? I would say the last season was probably the best season. I would say this is my second favorite because I like the direction that Rooster Teeth went with it. And I want to see more stuff like this, but this was a good opportunity to see what Rooster Teeth would do with these slower seasons and how people would generally react to them, and I feel like that was an experiment all along, what Rooster Teeth wanted to test. See if, fans would be fine with these type of seasons, see if it would be fine with the slower episodes that are not always focused around the fighting and focused around developing the characters and giving world building. And I feel like the season overall was very successful. Hopefully Rooster Teeth got a lot of information from the season and feedback from everyone that watched it of how we truly feel about these type of seasons. I would love to see more like this, because hopefully next time they try something like this, hopefully they slow it down a bit. I mean, not too slow to where it's too slow, but I mean, I want it slowed down to the point to where, at the very least, there's a lot of time to really think about the changes in the characters instead of just hopping to one scene to the next from individual characters. So maybe Rooster Teeth will do that next time, we'll see where it goes, but it was an enjoyable season. I cannot wait for Season 5 to finally come out. I love you all, you have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.